everything right, it was you and me.
Hello everyone, my name is Naima and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going over a reading wrap up and I'm very excited to do it because this is the most amount of books I've read in a while since being here at school. And I read some really good books this month. Also, there are some books, I think maybe 2 books that I read in the tail end of November that I didn't get a chance to talk about because I filmed my wrap up a little bit earlier, so I'm going to talk about those also. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. So at the tail end of November, I read Thrive by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is, I believe, the 4th book in the Addicted series, and it was really good but also really unnecessary. I love this series and this world and these characters, and I love to jump at the chance of reading like anything about them, but Thrive was really unnecessary. It goes over the 2 years that were in Kiss the Sky and Hot House Flower, but in Lily and Lo's perspective. And although I love Lily and Lo, I didn't care for a lot of it, and that pissed me off. I ended up rating this one 3 stars just because it was a bit boring. I do love Lily and Lo. I will say, I believe that they're probably my least favorite couple. I know so many people are about to come after me right now, and that is fine, but I think they're my least favorite couple. I've been thinking about it recently, like who really truly is my favorite couple, like first, second, third, in the Addicted / Calloway Sister series, and I hate to do it because I say that whenever I read the next book and it's following like a different character, I'm like, wait, but I really love them. So right now the standing is Rose and Connor, Rank and Daisy, and Lily and Lo. I'm sorry. But yeah, anyways, I ended up giving this one 3 stars just because it was a bit boring and kind of unnecessary, but I still loved it. But I was just like, you know, I don't know, but I love them. It was weird. I was also in a weird mood. So yeah, I ended up giving that one 3 stars. The next book that I read, I'm actually gonna combine them together because I read Bad Dream by 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪 and also Dangerous Temptation by 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪. And Bad Dream is actually the short novella is in Dangerous Temptation, but in the very beginning. And so you're supposed to read like Bad Dream first. And so I did. So I'm counting them as like 2 books. So Bad Dream, I'll just talk about Dangerous Temptation because obviously it's like the little tiny prequel that you get. But Dangerous Temptation was so good. I literally devoured this book. I was on a bachelorette trip for Reagan from Rare Reads and we were on the beach, and so I decided to read this and it was just so amazing. Like, wow, I loved this book. It introduced me to the whole Midnight Dynasty series that Dangerous Press does, and I'm literally so obsessed with that world. Basically the whole like Midnight Dynasty revolves around 2 rivaling families, the Constantines and the Morellis, and so these are both kind of just like rich and powerful families that rule New York, and they just hate each other. Now, this was the first book that I ever read in the Midnight Dynasty series, and I'm so excited to continue on. But this book specifically, this book follows Bianca, and her mom hasn't really taken care of her and her younger brother the way that Bianca would have liked. She was always going on dates with different men, rich men, and just trying to find someone who will really take care of her and her family. And so for that, Bianca kind of resented her mom a lot of the time. And so the book starts out with Bianca's mother starting to date this new guy named Tiernan Morelli, obviously part of the Morelli family. While he's dating the mom, Bianca just has been super drawn to him, but also she hates him. He's incredibly rude to her for, like, from the jump, no reason, and she just really dislikes him. Always around, always making noise when, you know, she just really cannot stand him. Bianca is 17 in this book, and 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪 made it very clear multiple times throughout the book that the age of consent in New York is 17. Do with what you will. She is underage technically. Going on to say that Bianca's mom dies in the very beginning of the book. Bianca doesn't know what to do. She has no family around. She doesn't know what to do. She calls Tiernan, the guy that Bianca's mom was dating. He takes care of it, does all the funeral arrangements, and then he has Bianca and her younger brother come to live with him. This is very, very, very taboo, but it was so much fun. I don't know what it was, but I ate this book up. Like, I think it was probably like the forbidden aspect. I love a good forbidden romance, but it's just 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪's writing. It was like, oh my gosh. And if you know me and have been watching me for a while, I never really liked the Fallen Men series by 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪. I think it's because I don't really like motorcycle club romances, and I don't know, the ones I was reading, the first one I read, I think the first two. The first one did not like. The second one I liked way more, but just like not enough for me to continue with the series, so I never did, and I kind of like wrote off 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪 altogether as an author. But I'm so glad I read this book, because now I want to read other books that 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪 has written besides obviously the Motorcycle Club. I know she has some mafia, and I believe she has like this whole like painter type series, artist series, and yeah, I think it's called The Evolution of Sin that I really want to read. So I'm very glad that I gave her another chance. I ended up giving this one 5 stars, and it was so good, and I'm waiting patiently for the next book in the duet to come out. So this is part 1 of the duet, and then part 2 comes out in December, so I'm anxiously waiting. But yeah, I love this one, 5 stars. So like I said, after I read Dangerous Temptation by 𝓵𝓸𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪, I really wanted to read more in the Midnight Dynasty world. Again, that's like the rivaling family in New York, the Constantines and the Morellis. So I decided to read Stroke of Midnight by Kay Webster. The Midnight Dynasty universe is like written by a bunch of different authors. Each author focuses on a couple and a character. And so I wanted to kind of start from the beginning, and I did with Stroke of Midnight by Kay Webster. And let me tell you, this book really surprised me. This was the first book that I ever read by Kay Webster. I heard that Kay Webster like goes there, and she really did. I was like, I don't think I like this, but then I ended up loving it. I think I gave this one 4 stars, and it was so good. So this book follows Winston Constantine, and he is, I believe, the oldest son in the Constantine family. And so he is incredibly rich, incredibly powerful, works like in this big ass office building. I forget for what for, but has a bunch of employees under him. And then this book also follows this girl named Ash. And so this is really similar to Cinderella, so much that I had so much anxiety while reading this book. But we have Ash has 3 stepbrothers. Her dad just started dating this woman who's a doctor, and she's horrible. 3 or 2 stepsons were even worse. They were horrible to her, which, speaking of, trigger warnings for like sexual assault, harassment, and a few other things I can't really remember right now, but definitely look at the trigger warnings. New stepmother gets her a job basically cleaning the office building that Winston works at. She is a part of like the cleaning company. Winston, he's a man that likes structure. He likes everything to be clean. Ash's first night on the job, and she basically just doesn't clean like at all. She even leaves like wrappers of Starburst on the floor and the trash can, just like doesn't clean at all. And so Winston comes in the next day, and he's like, what the actual heck? Like, who was in here and didn't clean my office when I like everything to be clean and in order? Watches the security tapes back and watches everything that Ash does. She basically just sits there and eats Starburst the entire time. And so he hates that. And the next night he is in the office, and she walks in, and he confronts her basically. And he also realizes that she is quite simply the hottest woman that he has ever seen. And so he starts, this is the part that got me a little icked out. Basically, he has this whole degradation kink. He really likes when women are humiliated, and so he starts asking her to do humiliating things for money. And it's just that part, I will say, I know, bear with me, because that doesn't sound too appealing, but trust me, this book is so good. She's like, okay, weirdo, like, you're so old. He is older than her, like, it's a pretty big age gap. She just starts doing the things because she really needs money. Dad like spent all of her going away for college money, and so she needs to make the money quick. Yeah, he basically gets off on like degrading her and humiliating her, and she's like, okay, like, I need money. And so I really, that part in the beginning, I was like, I don't think I like this. This isn't like my typical romance, my go-to romance, but it ended up being so good for some reason. Like, I don't know what it was. I believe it was the dynamic between Winston and Ash, like how also the dynamic changed when they started having feelings for each other. Ash really was like, okay, if you want to like build me down, you have to like pick me up and build me back up. She needed like praise and coddling, and just, it was actually really, really sweet, and it broke my heart and gave me so much anxiety, and it leaves off on a huge cliffhanger, so I need to continue. The rivalry between the Morellis and the Constantines is very evident here. The sons of the Morellis like finds out about her, and it's just bad. It's just really bad and crazy, and the stepbrothers are insane and I hate them and I cannot stand them. But you need to read that book. I really need to read the second book, which is Prince Charming. It was so good and it really surprised me, so give it a chance. I'm telling you, give it a chance. So the next book that I read was A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson, and this I wouldn't say is a romance per se, but it was quite simply one of the most beautiful books that I've ever read in my entire life. This is a reimagining of Dracula's Brides. Wow, I have chills just thinking about it. It is probably the prettiest book that I've ever read. Like, it was so beautiful. The book is written completely in letter format. Like, she's writing to Dracula. The main character is Constanta. I don't know how to pronounce, I think it's Constanta. It starts off with her perspective of how Dracula found her, how he built her up. He really came into her life when she needed someone and she needed help. Just like flipped her life upside down. He turns her into a vampire, and it shows the progression of just a really, really horrible toxic relationship. Someone who demands all this person's time, doesn't want them to be happy if they're not involved, and the evolution of something that she thought was so beautiful and amazing turning into her worst nightmare that she had to live daily, especially when Dracula got another wife and a husband. And so it was just really beautiful, and I think it's also a really good reality check for someone who reads as many dark romances as I do. Like, I need to be reminded constantly that this is not the norm. Half these books actually really toxic, and it's a good reality check for someone who's really impressionable. Yeah, I loved this book. It was so beautiful. I cried. I don't think I've tabbed another book as much as I tabbed this one. I love how there was actually a small romance, and there's a few romances in here. People find out, oh, this is actually how I'm supposed to be loved. That is like the most beautiful thing to me. Go through such a horrible romance. One of my favorite quotes in here, I think it's actually in the dedication. It's like, to those who survived a love that felt like death, and to those still fighting, or something like that. I believe that's the dedication, the way I have that memorized. Yeah, when people go through a love that felt like death and they find out, oh, this is actually, I'm supposed to be loved. Like, people aren't supposed to tear me down when they're in love with me. Like, I think that's the most beautiful thing, and I really loved this book. I gave this one 5 stars. It's definitely going on my top 20 of 2021 list. It was beautiful. The next book that I read in November was Savage Lover by Sophie Lark, and I really enjoyed my time with this one. I gave it a 3.75 star rating. It was not my favorite Sophie Lark, but it was still really, really good. This is a bad boy romance, and I love me some bad boys, so I was really eating this up. So this book followed Nero, and if you've been reading the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark, you would know that he's kind of like the bad boy who just marches to the beat of his own drum. He loves cars, he does what he needs to do to protect his family, but through and through, he is a bad boy. And so the heroine of the story is Camille, and Camille works night and day for her family. Her dad owns a body shop. She's been fixing cars for basically her entire life now. Her dad is really struggling. He's sick, and she has a younger brother in high school, and she basically is the sole provider for her family. They are dirt poor, and she really took on the mother role because her mother has not been in her life for a long time. So she was playing the mother role for her brother and feeding her father and just making sure that they are good. Her brother starts to fall into the wrong crowd in high school, and he starts selling drugs for one of his friends. So Camille actually catches her brother selling drugs and confiscates them from him at a party. And so on their way home from a party, they get pulled over by the police. Police officer finds the drugs and basically blackmails her into people that her brother was selling the drugs for. This officer really wanted her to hone in on Nero and Nero's life, and basically was just like blackmailing her. Nero and Camille actually went to high school together. They really liked each other. It's placed years after high school. Nero and Camille are looking at each other for the first time with fresh eyes, and it's really beautiful, and I really enjoyed this book. I love a bad boy whose soft spot is for like one girl. It is just one of my favorite things to read about. So Savage Lover was really good, and I gave it 3.75 stars. The next book that I read in November is Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark, and this is quite possibly my favorite book in the Brutal Birthright series. I loved this book. This is a second chance romance book, and this follows Dante, which is the oldest sibling in the Gallo family, and he has really surpassed everyone. I love him. So this book follows Dante and 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬 is someone who had just moved to Chicago. Her father is like a diplomat, and they had just moved to Chicago, and they're renting, or I think they're staying for like a summer or something like that. The beginning of the book starts off with 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 about to graduate high school, and Dante is a few years older. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 always had dreams of going to fashion school, becoming a fashion designer, but her father is like, no way, like, am I ever letting you do that? So absolutely not. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 and her family going to a gala or some type of event for socialites in Chicago. Father had just found her acceptance letter to some fashion school. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬's father obviously wasn't happy about it. They arrive at the gala. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 decides to like stay in the car for a little bit and just collect herself. That was a really emotional conversation for her. As she's in the car just trying to clear her mind, as her parents are inside the gala, Dante hops in the car and literally drives away, not knowing that 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 is in the back. And I just, wow, I love this book. Okay, so basically he hops in the car. He's like running from someone. If you didn't know, this is a mafia romance, so they're always on the run from someone. And he drives away, and he realizes 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬's in the back. They start talking. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 is obviously incredibly scared at first, but they end up just really vibing with her. I love Dante's reaction to seeing 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 for the first time. Like, I highlighted so many things when they like their first interaction, and it was amazing. He was so in awe of her beauty. He ends up leaving her somewhere and ditching the car. From that moment on, Dante can't think of anything else. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 can't think of anyone else. They had such a good conversation, and they both are like incredibly attracted to each other. And so later on they start seeing each other and meeting up in secrecy because 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬's parents can't know. This has, I will say, this has one trope that I absolutely hate, and I don't know if I can say it because it is a spoiler and I don't want you guys to be spoiled, but this has one trope that I hate, cannot stand, but it ended up working so well, and somehow this became my favorite book in the entire series so far. Anyways, I'm just gonna say that. You guys can probably guess by me saying that, but somehow it was still really amazing. While 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬's young, they're having so much fun together, just living life, going around town, just falling in love with each other like head over heels. When 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬's family finds out, they're not happy. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 invites him over for dinner, and they're like, absolutely not. They have to break up for reasons. I'm not gonna give too much away, but they have to break up for reasons. Dante has never been the same after that. 𝓲𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 has never been the same after that, and it's a second chance romance, and they both are in Chicago for some time, and I don't want to give too much away, but it is so good. It's second chance romance. If you like second chance romances, I highly suggest this one. Obviously gave this one 5 stars. So the next 2 books, I ended up learning a valuable lesson, and that is I can't really trust book talk all that much. And I know I have a few book talkers who are following me and that are my friends. I love you guys. You guys have never recommended me a bad book, but these were books that were super popular on TikTok. They were just like, I've only ever seen one person talk about them like individually, so I was like, you know what, this sounds kind of interesting. I'm gonna give it a try, and I ended up DNFing both of them. One of the books that I read was called Anesthesia by 𝓶𝓮𝓭𝓲𝓪. Have never read a single book by 𝓶𝓮𝓭𝓲𝓪, never will again. So this book was about this girl in high school, and basically she was like this major hippie. She loves to do drugs, she loves to have fun, just go crazy, but her parents never know anything about it. She had an older brother who messed up badly his career by drunk driving one night from a party. He was good at baseball, I believe, or something like that, and he was never the same after that and had to go to rehab and all these things. So she does partake, but she doesn't want her family to know about it. Keeps that on the low. He was actually a foster kid, and the heroine's father ends up fostering him, and he can see right through her BS right from the beginning. He knows that she's always high. He knows that she isn't the good girl that she like portrays to be. First of all, one thing that I don't like about these books, I used to love it, so if I've ever recommended a book where they do this, I'm sorry. I probably loved it and I still do, but my tolerance is very short for these type of books. So from the beginning, he decides to just hate her and him for absolutely no reason. These 2 met at school on his very first day, but they didn't know that they were going to be foster siblings, and they hit it off just fine. Then a few hours later, when she gets home and sees her foster brother there, she's like, oh no, you? Like, what? You guys just hit it off at school. Like, what is the reason for this? did not understand. And so they hate each other right off the bat, no good reason for it. And so I hate that. I hated that. I will say that the writing was atrocious. I mean, yes, I know, who am I to say an author's writing is horrible, but like seriously, this writing was so bad. Like I couldn't deal with it. But the ultimate reason why I ended up DNFing it, because I do like a good bully romance usually, was because this girl was white and she goes to get dreadlocks. Yeah. And so I was like, no, I'm not reading this book anymore. So I DNF'd it. But yeah, this was not really a good book and I wouldn't recommend, simply based off the writing and also the fact that she goes to get locks. Like, no, like no, you know? And then the next one that I DNF'd was 𝓶𝓮𝓭𝓲𝓪, and this is the first book in the 𝓶𝓮 University trilogy by 𝓶𝓮𝓭𝓲𝓪 and 𝓵𝓮 Beck. And I feel like I've read this duo before, but I can't remember. But I DNF'd this one at 50%. And I was so mad that I was DNFing it because I really was enjoying my time with it up until a certain point. So this book is really cool. If you like the Kingmaker series, I feel like you would like it. Basically, this is a university filled with kids of criminals and like crime lords and stuff like that. The heroine, it's her first year at the school and she is having some trouble at the school because her father ended up being a rat and basically getting a bunch of the kids at the school, all their parents got in trouble, and so she is labeled as a rat in result of the things that her father has done, which is basically like tattle on everyone. From the minute she steps foot at the school, it is horrible for her, and it pissed me off because I was like, you can't, I know this is a school for like crime lords children, but there has to be some type of code of ethics. So she gets like the shittiest room, no bed, basically just like a mattress on the floor. They barely serve her in the cafeteria. Everyone hates her. They're constantly harassing her. The moment she stepped foot in the school, her door had the word rat on it in red. She isn't allowed to do her laundry and just like a plethora of other things. The hero of the story is actually the one that her father like hurt the most, like damaged the most. At first he believes he's just gonna leave her alone, like whatever, no sweat off his back. But she says something to him along the lines of, why are you so mad at me? Like, why do you hate me? Even though he just doesn't really like care about her. She's like, why are you mad at me? Your family's perfectly fine and intact while my father is in jail and my family's suffering. He's like, oh no, he didn't, because his family actually went through a lot as a result of what her father did. He starts like harassing her, making her spar with him during like the sparring class or whatever, and just absolutely hates her, but also is like super obsessed with her, as bully romances go. But the point that I DNF'd this book at was, so obviously they start to feel things for each other. They start sleeping with each other as bully romances go. One day he walks into her room to find her completely passed out cold. She hasn't eaten anything in days and she's incredibly like sick. She could have died. So he takes her to the infirmary, finally wakes up and comes to. The doctor's like, why haven't you eaten in the past few days? She goes to explain that they aren't feeding her there, and he goes, oh no. She actually has an eating disorder. She's anorexic. And she's like, that's actually not true. And it just pissed me off. And so he basically told her that she had an eating disorder instead of like coming clean and honest. I was like, why would you do that? You obviously care about her, so why are you lying to the doctor about why she needs medical attention? After the doctor leaves, she's like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, you can't have anyone thinking that you're a tattletale and a rat. And I DNF'd it at that exact moment that he said that. I could not. I was like, what? So she almost dies. And he's like, you can't be tattling on people. They're gonna think worse of you. I wanted to fight the fucking air. Like, I was so mad. I was so incredibly pissed. I was like, this is not how you write an alpha dominant hero, because I'm sorry, an alpha dominant hero doesn't give a crap about what other people think of him. And so he's like, no, you can't tell anyone, like it's gonna ruin your reputation even more if you tattle. Like, what? She almost died. I couldn't. So I DNF'd it at 50%, and it was literally exactly at 50%. I was like, what? I made it like all this way, and I was actually kind of enjoying it. Even though the treatment of her really did piss me off, I was still enjoying it until he said that, and I was like, what? Like, that book really brought me places. Like, I was so mad. I was like, there's like a line I feel like most authors don't cross. Kinda, you know? The thing is, Wow. If I tell you guys my favorite books of the year, which I will, you're gonna be like, Nayeema, that contradicts everything you just said. But there is something that didn't feel right about this one, okay? It just didn't feel right, so I DNF'd it. I did. Okay, so the next book on the opposite end of the spectrum was Addicted After All by 𝓫𝓲𝓬𝓲, and I gave this one 5 stars, and this is actually the last book in the Addicted series. And I loved this book. I witnessed some beautiful things in this book. It brought me places. I felt so happy, but I can't really explain what this one was about, obviously, because spoilers, and I don't want to give any spoilers for what has become my favorite series ever. This one obviously follows Lily and Lo because it's the addicted part of the whole world and universe. You see, this is what I mean. When I read this, I was like, okay, Lo and Lily, like, I love them. But I did end up loving this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was exactly what I needed. After I DNF'd those last 2 books, I think I even put it on my story. Like, the only hero that I can stomach right now is Lo, because the past 2 heroes were just pissing me off. Like, I just couldn't deal. So yeah, and then I read A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, which I actually have a whole reading vlog up for, so you guys can go check that up. I chose a random book off my bookshelf and then landed on A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. I'm not gonna tell you my thoughts. Go check out my last video if you want to know. And then the last book that I read in December was Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed, and this is quite possibly one of my favorite books ever. So my friend Em from Em Reads Romance recommended this book to me. She is the queen of hockey romances and sports romances in general. Like, she knows her shit. If you need a romance or like a sports romance, go to her. Specifically hockey. She is Canadian, so she loves hockey romances. But I'll have her channel linked down below so you guys can go check her out. She is basically was talking about this book to me on FaceTime, like just raving about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read this book now because it sounds like everything I love. So imagine 2 hockey players, the best in the league. They are perceived to be rivals, and they actually truly do hate each other. But the world and the media has created a narrative that they're rivals from the beginning, since their like senior year of college. And into like the rookie season and their years. Little does the world know that they are hooking up the entire time. I just, wow, like this book, oh my gosh, it was So basically we have Ilya Rozanov, and he is a Russian hockey player. He is very much the boy who's like kind of bad. He doesn't give a crap. He will step on anyone to get what he wants. He just like, he really doesn't care. And granted, he has gone through a lot in his past, and so anyways, that's besides the point. And then we have Shane, who's kind of like the golden boy. You look at him and he's like, he's a good boy. He's like really respectful to everyone he comes across. He's just like a really sweet soul, like kind of like, I don't know, like I get golden retriever vibes from him. First of all, the opposition of the two men, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that is everything that I love. Like, it's very much Grumpy Sunshine. And Shane is like the nervous, anxious one, and it's just anyways, they're both really good. They both play the same position. They both are basically like the captains of their teams. They're the biggest rivals because it is Montreal. Shane plays for Montreal, and then Ilya plays for Boston, and so they're each other's biggest rivals. The media has this whole narrative. It's their rookie season, and they feel like this chemistry between each other, and they start hooking up, and it is quite simply so good. The smut in here was so good. Like, it was everything. I loved it so much. It's really interesting because Shane has never really seen himself liking men before, and so this really confused him. Ilya had hooked up with one other man before. I just loved this book. Like, can you imagine the entire world thinking that you hate each other, and then really they're fooling everyone? Like, they're literally fooled everyone. It is so good. So good. I'm actually going to go back and read the other books in the series. This is the second book in the Game Changer series. Em says that the first book is really good, but not as good as the second one. And then she says the 5th book is like as good as the second, like so good. And I really want to read the 5th one next. I'm just so obsessed. Em got me and Emmy to read it. Emmy from Emmy is Reading, and we both loved it. It's written in 3rd person, which I didn't think I'd like. And I really usually don't, but this didn't bother me one bit. I was in both of these men's head. It was so much fun. And yeah, I just genuinely loved this book. And now I'm gonna follow every recommendation that Em suggests and gives to me. So yeah, go check her out. She'll be linked down below. She is planning to upload a lot in December, so be subscribed for when her videos and recommendations drop because she knows her shit. Okay, so that was the last book that I read in November. So I am filming this video a little bit early, but I'm probably not gonna be reading a lot in the next day. So I figured I'd just go ahead and film this for Tuesday. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a big like and a comment down below, and also subscribe so you never miss another upload from me. And I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!
If I got one thing right, it was you.